My name is Professor T.P. Christmas, and I'm a speech instructor at St. Clair County Community College over in Port Huron, Michigan. And today I am going to talk about a point-counterpoint debate project that students do as part of my class. If you're in my class, you should have a handout like this when you view this particular presentation. Now, this handout is a point-counterpoint debate project speeches guide sheet, and it starts with a couple of pages that spells out for you the particulars of this presentation. Then following that, you're going to find a PowerPoint on persuasion in particular that's addressed in chapters 24 and 25 of our textbook. And I also do have the lecture on this particular PowerPoint in this channel. If you're interested in looking at it, just look up persuasion and chapters 24 and 25, and you'll get a pretty detailed lecture on persuasion and how to structure a good presentation that's persuasive. But the PowerPoint, past that, you're going to find a few handouts, and then the PowerPoint that we're going to deal with during this presentation, which is point-counterpoint debate project, preparing counter arguments and rebuttals. In my last lecture on chapters 24 and 25, I teach you how to structure a good argument. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I won't go any further than that with that. But in this one, I teach you how to prepare your presentation so that you can counter effectively what another person might bring to the table. All right? Now, for the point-counterpoint project, you are going to give, if you're in my class, 3 speeches. Each speaker will speak 3 times. The first time they speak, they're going to give an informative presentation. This is to provide us with a foundation concerning your subject matter so that it is easier for us to follow along. The second speech is a constructive speech. The name of this presentation actually gives it away. It is given to give you opportunity to construct your argument. During that presentation, you will actually establish a clear thesis, come up with claims to support that thesis, and present evidence or cards to further reinforce your thoughts on that subject. Then lastly, each person is going to give a rebuttal, and the rebuttal is to allow you one more opportunity to persuade the audience to your side of the issue. Now, when you give these presentations, you will give them in the following manner. The speaker that's on the affirmative side of the argument will give their informative presentation. They'll have 2 to 3 minutes to lay their informative part of the presentation out for the audience, and they'll be followed by the person that's on the negative side of the argument. Now, if you're not sure which side of the argument you're on, don't fret. We will get to explain that to you very shortly. But each presenter will present from 2 to 3 minutes. Now, because this is an informative effort, some students elect to do it together, and I don't have a problem with that. If you do a joint presentation, then you both should make certain that together your presentation is between 4 and 6 minutes. And each person needs to speak equally. If it's one person doing all the talking and the other person has no substance, the latter person's score will suffer. Okay, but we get the informative portion in place so that we as an audience have enough knowledge to follow the argumentation that's going to come at us next. Then the speaker on the affirmative side will announce what is being discussed. We refer to this as a point of discussion. So if you're talking about smoking, then at some point, after you've given us information about smoking and its impact and whatnot, somebody will announce, usually the affirmative speaker, the point to be discussed. Maybe it's that you want the smoking ban repealed. So the person would say, we are going to discuss the smoking ban and whether or not it should be repealed. I believe that the smoking ban should be repealed. My opponent disagrees with this, and now we will enter into our persuasive portion of the presentation, okay? When you do that, once that's done, and stating that does not go against the affirmative speaker's time, then the affirmative speaker will give a constructive speech that's about 3 to 4 minutes in length. After they have stated their side of things and constructed their argument with sound claims and evidence, then they'll be followed by the speaker on the negative side of the issue. And they'll give their appeal for 3 to 4 minutes. After that, the speaker on the affirmative side will have 1 to 2 minutes to give a rebuttal, and the speaker on the negative side will give their rebuttal and a conclusion to the debate project as a whole. Now, if you don't know what to put in a rebuttal, I have a sheet that's included in the packet, and we'll talk about it in just a minute, okay? Now, as I previously stated, we need to clarify what we mean by debate, what we mean by a point of discussion. The point that's being discussed is called a proposition, okay? If you, in this class, I've worked with you all to show you how to structure your propositions, but should you decide to get into a debate in the future, you'll want to follow these rules to establish your proposition. Always put your proposition in the form of a statement and not a question. Why? Because you want discussion, not just a simple yes or no answer. You also want to make sure that you keep your language unbiased. The language needs to be neutral so that both sides have a chance of winning, of actually winning or participating competitively in the debate. If it's too one-sided, that doesn't happen. And make sure that you've selected a topic that's worthy of discussion, that it's relevant enough to the audience at hand for them to want to hear about it. Okay, that being said, now in chapters 24 and 25, I talked with you all about preparing or constructing an argument that supports your position. Okay, you had your proposition, we talked about that, and you know what side you're on, and you know how to build evidence so that you reinforce your side of the issue. Okay, persuasion, good persuasion includes counter arguments. You do have to think about the other side of things and how you might refute what they're saying. The following slides provide a list of these strategies so that just as you've had good direction in preparing an argument to support your side of things, you also get in mind a good strategy that you might use to refute what the other person, other persons have brought forth on the other side of the argument, okay? Choosing a side is important. You need to make sure you know what side of the issue you're on. So let's make sure we understand this. The affirmative side is the side that supports change. If I am an affirmative speaker and I'm talking about the smoking ban, well, the smoking ban is in effect. That is the way things are, and we refer to that as status quo. If I want to see that change, if I want the ban repealed, then I am on the affirmative side. I'm affirming this proposed change. Now, the negative side of the issue is the side that does not support the change. Either they feel like status quo is just fine, or the change that's being proposed, they have no faith that it will actually work, okay? So, what is the goal of the affirmative side? Well, they have two goals: to attack status quo and say that we need change, and to argue that a specific change should occur, okay? Now, because they're the side that wants change, they are the ones that bear the burden of proof. After all, it's their idea that there should be change. They have to prove that this change is worthwhile, okay? Now, how do they achieve this? Well, there are four basic strategies they can elect to use. One, they can do an inherency attack. They can state that while status quo exists, that it's no longer getting the job done, either because people have lost faith in it attitudinally, or it just doesn't work. It's flawed in some way. Okay, the other thing, another type of attack that they could launch is a harms attack, stating that there are consequences, negative consequences that will occur should change not come about. Okay, so when you look at your side of things, can you prove either of these? Then you need to make sure that you incorporate it in your argument, in your constructive appeal, and in your rebuttal as well to achieve this, okay? What's the third strategy you can use on the affirmative side? You can use a solvency attack. In the solvency attack, you just show that there are unrealized benefits, that the affirmative side, the affirmative side's proposition or proposed change is just superior and should be implemented because of the benefits that are to be gained. Okay? And then you can do what we refer to as a running refutation or critique. This is a German word, so don't deem me for a typo. That's actually how it's spelled. In this one, the affirmative side pulls a blitz. If you're a football fan, you know what I mean. They pull an all-out blitz on the other side. They attack ethical flaws. They pull out fundamental flaws that they feel exist. They deal with fallacies of logic that they identify in what the other side is bringing out. I mean, it's just anything that they can pick out to prove that the negative side needs to reconsider its ways. Okay, so those are 4 different strategies, counter strategies that you can use in order to strengthen your argument. Now, what about the negative side? Well, they have one job and one job only, and that's to disprove the proposed change, the effectiveness of it. Now, they have different ways that they can do this. They can launch a harms attack on their side. They can attack what the affirmative side is proposing by saying, look, status quo is satisfactory and change is unnecessary and wasteful, okay? They can launch a solvency attack or show that there is a disadvantage to making this change, that it would not either, it doesn't solve the problem, or in solving the problem, it creates bigger problems unnecessarily. Or more serious problems. Then you have the need plan wedge. This is where on the negative side, you prove that there's a breakdown in the connection between the changes that the proposed side is bringing forth and the benefits that are to be realized. Now, this happens sometimes when we deal with bullying and school uniforms. So there are those that will say, okay, now with school uniforms, bullying will be eliminated. Now, if that's true, that's wonderful. But if it can be proven that school uniforms don't affect bullying in any way, then that disconnect can serve the negative side as well and strengthen their argument. Okay? Now, you can also pull a running refutation or a blitz on the negative side. We discussed this before, going after anything that's illogical, that's fundamentally or ethically flawed. Okay? Now, in lieu of this, how do you approach this? Well, the first and best thing for you to do is to build your case. Make sure that you brainstorm within yourself or with others with whom you can discuss things with, what main points you want to make for your presentation, all right? These are the points that you need to then find evidence to support, okay? And that's the next thing. Gather your evidence. You need to be diligent about this. It's better to have too much evidence than too little, okay? Then you need to anticipate the opposition. If you had to argue against you, what would you say? And think about it. You have to kind of play devil's advocate with your own argument and look for the holes or the flaws within it. Because trust me, your opponent will. Okay? Then you want to make sure that you refine your delivery. Be dynamic and forceful, not overbearing and intimidating. But it's okay to defend and represent your side with some passion, okay? Make sure that you give us quality over quantity. Sometimes people think a good argument is a long argument, and no, that's not always the case. People are looking at what you give them, and they want to know that you have respect for their time. Make sure you maintain eye contact and good posture and good gesturing, and never lose control of your emotions. This is not a time, this is for getting out of hand. Look, people have a right to their opinion, just like you have a right to yours. Respect their right to choose. And make sure that you slow down. It's very easy to get so passionate about a thing and so nervous all at the same time that you just speed through it. But an argument that is so fast that we can't follow is an argument that's sure to fail. Now, make certain that you stay away from some of these other bad habits too. You know, being unimaginative and just sticking to the facts is boring. Be imaginative, be creative. Just make sure that you have sound argumentation when you do it. Don't get into facts for facts' sake and hit us with so many statistics that it chokes us. Give us the statistics that we really need and then leave the rest out. And don't get into repetition that has no purpose to it, and make sure that you summarize everything that you've addressed. See, you've heard your argument many times, you've practiced it, but this is our first time. And a summary, a pre-summary and a post-summary will help us follow you better and improve your chances of winning. Give us a chance to really, really believe in you. Now, what about your rebuttal? Rebuttals are pretty basic. You know, if you've ever been in an argument with someone and you're really passionate about it, it's highly probable that at the end of the argument you felt like, ooh, I just wish I had one more thing, one more opportunity to talk to them. I'd say this, okay? Well, this is your chance to say that. But you want to do it in an organized manner. Now you say, well, TNG, how can I prepare for a rebuttal? Well, you can't prepare for it 100%, but you can prepare for it 75%. See, on the form that you have in your packet, there are 4 parts to the rebuttal, and 3 of those parts can be prepared before you hear the other person's argument. The first thing you want to do is begin by identifying your stance to the judge one more time. Hello, my name is TNG Christmas, and I believe blah, 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 okay? Then, number 2, this is the part that you can't do until you hear the other side of things. But you've been listening to this person for 5 minutes, and you know the subject matter. At this point in time, you'll be surprised at how well you'll come up with what best to use to counter what they have to say. And that's when you speak to it. You say, well, my opponent brought out this point, but I don't agree with that because of this, that, and the other. Now, on the rebuttal form that I gave you in class, I actually give you an example, all right? Then after you've addressed the other side, then it's time to add additional evidence to your side. Now, you don't bring up a new argument. You reinforce the original argument you have by adding some additional evidence, all right? And then lastly, you clearly restate your initial point of view, okay? Now, there are some point-counterpoint examples that I've put out online for you that should be available. Now, technology can be an interesting thing, and sometimes life is not perfect, but if they're not available to you, there are other persuasive examples that we'll cover in class that you can look at, and also in the learning unit that you can view on your own, okay? All right, so what are the rules of debate? How do we get into this and make sure we maintain a certain level of decorum? Well, 1, stick with the issue. Don't ever get into a personal attack of your opponent, okay? Never talk out loud during their presentation. Going, you gotta be kidding me. I don't believe that. That's inappropriate, and it will cause your grade to go down. Okay, it's inappropriate and it's unnecessary and won't be tolerated. The next thing you want to do is when you speak, stay within your allocated time. If you're 3 to 4 minutes and you haven't asked for an extension, then you need to keep your argument 3 to 4 minutes, please. Leave your personal views out of the debate unless you can reinforce them through sound evidence, okay? And lastly, address the judge and not your opponent. Sometimes people will get into a situation where they're presenting, let's pretend this is the podium, and they're so, passionate about what they have to say, they turn towards their opponent and they'll do it like this. They'll say, and my opponent said, blah, 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 blah. And my opponent said, blah, blah, blah. I call this rubbernecking, and everything. No, don't do that. Stay with us. We're the audience, we're the judge, and we will then have more of an appreciation for your argument, and you won't intimidate the person on the other side, okay? So who wins the debate? Lastly, who wins it? It's simple. It's the person who knows their argument, and they prepared very well and thoroughly for that argument. If you don't put the time in, it will show, okay? They have a well-organized strategy, and they have more than enough evidence to prove their side. And then this last one, you can't, it's a matter of the heart. They debate till the end, okay? You have to know that there are times when you're going to win some arguments, and there are other times when you'll lose. It's just par for the course. But if you approach persuasion and debate in an appropriate manner, you'll always find that the experience enriches you. And that's what we're shooting for. So even if at the end of all of your effort, you find that, you know what, I debated till the end and it didn't come out the way I wanted to, you'll still find that you know more than you knew before you got started. I'll wrap this up with an old childhood story here for those of you who can tolerate it. Treat debate like a childhood fight. I had this childhood fight, a famous fight, between Cherie and Dana. Okay, Cherie was this little cute little petite thing, and she didn't bother people much, but she got a lot of attention from the boys at middle school, and Dana didn't like that. Now Dana was a rather tall girl, kind of gangly, and she got angry because a boy that she was fond of took interest in Cherie. So she picked at Cherie, and she proposed to Cherie that they have a scuffle to settle this matter, and Cherie wasn't really interested in this, but she was kind of pushed into a corner. So we get out to the playground, and even though we shouldn't, like any other group of kids sometimes, mischief is interesting, or it kind of pulls you in. And so here we are at this playground, and we're going through this. Now, Dana is handing out all these wolf tickets. It seems like she is bound to be the winner by, hands down. By a mile. And Cherie takes this and she listens to all of Dana's arguments and all of that. Finally, once she's had enough, she looks at Dana and she says, look, I've heard all of your arguments and whatnot. If you want to fight me, then quit all that talking and let's get on with it. At that point, Cherie balled up her little fist, flew across the playground, and bopped Dana in the eye. And down Dana went, and that was the end of the fight. Okay. Sometimes you have to, and Cherie, of course, was the winner. Sometimes you have to debate to the end. It may be that it seems like the other side is just wiping up the floor with you, but the thing that you bring to the table at the last minute turns the table, and you ultimately end up the winner. Their life is no fantasy. You will win some and you'll lose some, but I'm confident that if you prepare well, it will be a good presentation and well worth hearing. Thank you, and I'll see you in class.